Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Emily Sena was born on May 7, 2007 in the city of Várzea Grande, located in the Brazilian state of Mato Grosso. She lived with her mother and her stepfather, Antonio, who had taken on the father role in her life since she was 6 years old. Antonio worked as a radiology technician at the Santa Helena Hospital in the neighboring city of Cuiabá. The family led a modest but tight-knit life. Emily was known for her kind nature, quiet disposition, and calm temperament. Classmates and neighbors often described her as a gentle soul, someone who stayed away from conflict. At the age of 16, Emily discovered she was expecting, a revelation that was unexpected but eventually accepted. The father was her young partner, Caio, who was close to her in age. Rather than distancing himself, Caio stood by her. They soon began living together, and he took an active role in the preparations for the baby's arrival. He accompanied Emily to medical appointments, helped with logistics, and participated in discussions about names and baby supplies. Despite their youth, Caio showed a strong sense of responsibility and commitment. Their relationship, though naturally faced with challenges due to their age, was described as stable and supportive. For Emily, the pregnancy marked a significant turning point in her life. She spoke enthusiastically about her future daughter, and often shared her excitement with friends and family. Her mother and stepfather Antonio were incredibly supportive. They helped choose furniture, purchased clothing, and prepared the nursery together. The atmosphere in their home reflected joy and eager anticipation. The gender reveal was celebrated twice, once with Caio's relatives and once with Emily's family. Friends recalled how radiant she looked when she talked about becoming a mother. Meanwhile, in another part of Mato Grosso lived Natalie Helen Pereira, a 25-year-old woman married to a man named Christian. The couple had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Natalie worked in public safety, was officially employed in the fire department, and was also attending nursing classes. To the outside world, she appeared organized, responsible, and nurturing. But behind that appearance lay a more complex reality. Several years earlier, Natalie had undergone a medical procedure to have her fallopian tubes tied, meaning she could no longer conceive naturally. However, she began claiming that she was expecting again. To support this story, Natalie created fabricated medical documents, including ultrasound images, and told others that she was awaiting the birth of a baby girl. Christian believed her. He shared the news on social media, posted the ultrasound images, and even organized a gender reveal celebration. To make the story more believable, Natalie frequently posted pictures of herself with what appeared to be a growing belly, wore loose-fitting clothing, and attributed physical changes to her upcoming delivery. In reality, all of it was part of a carefully constructed and emotionally manipulative deception, a false pregnancy scenario that relied on psychological influence and manufactured evidence. In addition to staging a fabricated scenario, Natalie created an alternate online identity. Under the name Agnes Gu, she registered in several online communities for expecting moms. Within these forums, Natalie posed as a generous user who frequently offered baby items such as clothing, diapers, and accessories to other moms-to-be. There was only one condition. The items had to be picked up in person at her home, and the visitor had to come alone. This was part of a calculated plan in which her online alias became a tool to initiate contact and select a target. No one in Natalie's immediate circle, not Christian, not her family, had any idea that behind her cheerful exterior lay a carefully orchestrated deception. Her actions were part of a narrative she was determined to make real, no matter the cost. A few weeks before she went missing, Emily Sena began engaging more frequently in online groups for expecting mothers. She shared her thoughts about the pregnancy, asked for advice, and responded to offers of support. In one of those forums, she was contacted by a user named Agnes. The messages from Agnes were friendly. She claimed she wanted to donate items for a newborn girl, clothes, baby blankets, and diapers. It seemed generous, and Emily was genuinely interested. Their communication quickly became more personal. Agnes appeared warm and kind, reiterating that she just wanted to help. From the beginning, however, she insisted that whoever came for the items had to come alone. When Emily mentioned possibly bringing someone along, her partner or sister, Agnes grew hesitant. She responded that her street was full of nosy neighbors and that she preferred to avoid drawing attention. The replies were vague but not alarmingly suspicious. Emily discussed the offer with her family and initially declined to go alone. However, she later agreed after Agnes offered to send a driver to pick her up. She claimed the vehicle would be from a rideshare app, like Uber. On March 12, 2024, around noon, a car arrived to pick Emily up. But the driver, as investigators would later determine, had no ties to any rideshare platform. He was believed to be either a relative or associate of Natalie Pereira, the woman hiding behind the name Agnes. The vehicle was a plain civilian car, and Emily, unaware of any danger, got inside after telling her mother she'd be back soon. She expected nothing more than a quick pickup of donated items and a return home. When more than an hour passed without any word from Emily, her mother began to worry. Then messages began arriving from Emily's phone, but instead of calming her fears, they heightened them. The texts said she was fine, eating a pastry, and would return soon. But something felt off. The phrasing was unusual, overly formal, and unlike Emily's natural style of writing. Her mother sensed immediately that someone else had written the messages. She tried calling, but no one answered. Voice messages also went unanswered. Growing increasingly concerned, the family began contacting friends and acquaintances in hopes of locating Emily. Her stepfather, Antonio, who was working a shift at the hospital that day, instantly felt that something wasn't right. He already knew that Emily had plans to pick up the items, and the fact that she wasn't answering calls only deepened his concern. That evening, without further delay, the family filed an official missing person report. At that point, no one yet knew where Emily had been taken, who exactly the driver was, or the real destination she was heading toward. The only lead the family had was the online messages exchanged with someone named Agnes, where she mentioned living in the Jardim Florianopolis neighborhood in the city of Cuiabá. This clue became the starting point for family members and friends who began their own search. Concerned and growing increasingly desperate, they went door to door through nearby homes, checked the streets, and tried calling the number listed in the messages. But no one answered. Communication had gone dark. Emily's phone was still turned on, but she wasn't picking up. Suddenly, Agnes's online behavior changed. She stopped responding to messages in the chat groups and ceased offering help to others. It would later be discovered that shortly after Emily left her home, the woman had deleted both her messages and her account entirely. This disappearance from the digital space only confirmed the family's worst fears. This was no coincidence. By the evening of March 12th, the search for Emily was fully underway. Her relatives had contacted the local police, posted photos across social media, and pleaded with the public for help. The first hours following her disappearance were filled with urgency and fear, but no one could have imagined just how far the situation would escalate. The next morning, on March 13th, 2024, a woman arrived at the emergency room of Santa Helena Hospital in Cuiabá, carrying a newborn. She came in using a wheelchair and told the hospital staff that she had delivered the baby at home the previous day. According to her, the labor was quick and uncomplicated, so she hadn't needed medical assistance at the time. Now, she explained, she was just there for a post-delivery checkup. The woman identified herself as Natalie. Coincidentally, the hospital staff member on duty that morning was Antonio, one of the hospital's radiology technicians and Emily's stepfather. He didn't recognize the woman personally, but the moment he saw her, he felt a deep, unsettling sense that something was wrong. Emily had disappeared just the evening before, and one of the leading theories involved a conversation she had with a stranger from the internet offering baby items. Emily had told both her mother and Antonio about a woman she'd met online who went by the name Agnes. She had even shown them a photo of the woman from the messaging app. It was this photo and her overall appearance that sparked Antonio's recognition. Standing before him was the very woman his stepdaughter had been chatting with before she vanished. Natalie remained calm, showing no obvious signs of distress or physical discomfort. She held the newborn girl, whom the doctors estimated to be very recently born. However, something felt off. Her demeanor and physical condition did not match what would be expected of someone who had just gone through labor. There was no visible pain, no post-labor symptoms, no signs of bleeding or trauma. Even her posture and ability to move raised doubts. Despite arriving in a wheelchair, she navigated the space with ease, sitting down in the chair voluntarily rather than out of necessity. A preliminary medical evaluation deepened the suspicions. There were no indications of recent childbirth. Her cervix showed no signs of dilation. The uterus was its normal size, and there were no physiological changes or postpartum discharges typically seen after delivery. The medical staff immediately escalated the situation to hospital administrators and notified local authorities. At the same time, Antonio told investigators that Emily had gone missing the previous day after arranging to meet a woman who went by the name Agnes. When he realized the woman now standing in front of him matched the description and photograph Emily had shown him, his suspicions were confirmed. When officers arrived at the hospital, Natalie stated that the newborn girl was her biological daughter, whom she had delivered at home. She was unable to provide any documentation to verify this, explaining that the birth had been unexpected and that there hadn't been time to go to a medical facility. She responded calmly to questions, showing no signs of irritation or distress. However, the complete lack of medical evidence, the uncanny timing, and her connection to Emily's disappearance escalated the situation significantly. Authorities made the decision to restrict Natalie's movements and ordered a medical examination. A gynecological assessment was conducted, which revealed that Natalie had not recently been pregnant. The results were clear. There were no physiological indicators that she had recently given birth. This became a critical piece of evidence, confirming that her story was fabricated. Investigators also began looking into the origin of the newborn. Emergency blood tests and DNA analysis were ordered. Medical professionals confirmed that the infant had been born within the last 24 hours, which aligned closely with the timeline of Emily Sina's disappearance. This raised a pressing and chilling question. Could this child actually be Emily's daughter? Investigators searched Natalie's phone, recovering deleted conversations. Among those were messages linked to the alias Agnes, including conversations with Emily. These chats revealed that Emily had agreed to meet with her to receive baby items. This evidence showed a clear pattern of deliberate deception. Natalie had assumed a false identity, built trust, and arranged an in-person meeting under false pretenses. At this point, the theory that Natalie had simply come to the hospital for a checkup was no longer plausible. Law enforcement began to suspect that she might have brought in a baby who wasn't hers, but one taken from someone else. Their suspicions were confirmed when they began analyzing ultrasound images Natalie had previously posted on social media. The investigation found that the images weren't hers. They had been taken from another woman's profile, a person living in a different state with no known connection to Natalie. With these inconsistencies coming to light, the police shifted their focus to locating Emily Sina. Natalie was placed under medical supervision with law enforcement monitoring her closely. The infant she brought to the hospital was placed in temporary protective custody under the care of social services, pending verification of her biological identity. Soon after, Natalie was transported to the police station for formal questioning. Initially, she remained silent. When asked directly about the child's origin, she gave evasive answers, insisting that everything had already been explained and that nothing wrong had happened. Her demeanor stayed composed, with no outward signs of panic. But with mounting evidence, her refusal to offer a clear explanation appeared to investigators as a stalling tactic. Only after investigators presented her with the results of the medical exam, disproving her claim of having given birth, and the recovered text messages connecting her to Emily, did Natalie shift her approach. She provided her first version of events. According to her, she had met Emily through online parenting groups and claimed that Emily was having difficulties in her relationship and had allegedly considered not raising the child. Natalie said she offered to care for the baby and that Emily had supposedly agreed. However, law enforcement was skeptical of this version. Emily's family never indicated she had any such intentions, and they firmly denied that Emily had ever planned to give up her daughter. Emily's loved ones immediately refuted Natalie's claims. They made it clear that Emily had been eagerly anticipating the arrival of her daughter and had never expressed any doubt about keeping the baby. The entire family had been actively preparing for the new addition, purchasing clothing, organizing a nursery, and celebrating together. Her mother and stepfather explained that Emily saw her future daughter as the center of her life, and the idea of handing the baby over to someone else was completely out of character. This information was included in the official case file, and Natalie's statements were now under scrutiny for inconsistencies. Faced with mounting evidence, Natalie eventually changed her story. During a second interview with investigators, she admitted that she had lured Emily to a house under the pretense of offering baby items. According to her, Emily arrived alone, as agreed in their online conversation. Natalie claimed that Emily began experiencing pain and sat down, describing cramps. At that moment, Natalie approached her from behind and applied a forceful restraint. She did not specify an exact motive, but implied her intent was to incapacitate Emily. Once Emily lost consciousness, Natalie restrained her wrists and ankles using materials she had at hand. She then proceeded to attempt to extract the baby. Using a sharp kitchen implement, she made an incision along Emily's abdomen. Emily, who received no medical attention, passed away as a result of extensive blood loss. Natalie showed no signs of remorse in her statement. She insisted she wanted to care for the baby and that she hadn't intended to cause harm. However, the nature of her actions, the use of restraints, and the prepared materials painted a different picture, one of premeditation. As Natalie continued giving statements, her accounts grew increasingly inconsistent with verified facts. Investigators ultimately concluded that the incident had been planned in advance and that the idea of a mutual agreement between her and Emily regarding custody of the baby was entirely fabricated, a narrative likely constructed in an attempt to minimize legal consequences. Following Natalie's interrogation, law enforcement began checking all locations linked to her. A property in the Jardim Florianopolis area came under particular focus. This private home, which belonged to Natalie's extended family, was reportedly the meeting place with Emily. At the time, it was occupied by Natalie's brother and his wife, who said that Natalie had asked to use the house temporarily for the visit. During the inspection of the property, police were drawn to an area behind the house where the ground appeared recently disturbed. The soil was uneven, and in one spot, a section of skin, part of a foot, was visible. The area was immediately cordoned off, and forensic specialists were called to the scene. As they carefully removed the top layer of soil, it became clear a body had been buried by hand. An excavation began. Emily's body was found in a shallow grave, loosely covered with dirt and debris. The position of the body suggested it had been discarded hastily. Her wrists and ankles still bore the remains of restraints, ropes and fragments of plastic cable. Investigators would later confirm that the bindings were made from old internet wiring. The grave itself was crudely dug without tools and barely large enough to contain the body. Visible signs of trauma were present. Emily's face showed evidence of physical force, bruising, swelling, and scratches. Forensic pathologists documented damage to her cheekbones and nose. Additionally, there were markings on her neck consistent with compression, as well as bruises on her wrists, indicating she had been forcibly restrained. According to the autopsy, these injuries were sustained while she was still alive, pointing to the use of aggressive force. The autopsy confirmed that the cause of death was extensive blood loss resulting from a deep abdominal wound. The T-shaped incision in the lower abdomen was executed with such precision that it ruled out the possibility of it being accidental. According to forensic experts, the shape and depth of the cut suggested that the person responsible had a basic understanding of internal anatomy and had attempted to avoid harming the baby. This level of knowledge is uncommon for someone without medical training, though it could be acquired by watching detailed instructional videos. This was later verified through an analysis of Natalie's internet search history. One of the most critical findings was that the burial site had been prepared in advance. Initially, Natalie claimed that she had dug the grave after the incident, but later changed her statement, admitting that it had been prepared the day before the meeting. This inconsistency led investigators to re-examine her account. They concluded that Natalie had planned to conceal the body even before Emily arrived. The fact that part of the leg was still exposed only reinforced the theory that her plan had been hastily and incompletely carried out. A forensic team conducted a thorough examination of the scene. Using chemical reagents, they detected significant traces of biological material inside the house and around the property. Bloodstains were found in several rooms. While some areas of the floor had been washed, residues remained in the tile grout and seams. These findings were carefully documented and added to the criminal case. A psychological assessment, based on the investigative findings, pointed to clear signs of premeditated behavior. Natalie admitted that she had considered various ways to avoid consequences, but claimed she had not anticipated the public reaction her actions would trigger. Considering the volume of evidence, investigators concluded that the crime had been deliberately planned. The concealed grave, efforts to clean the scene, preparation of the property, and her actions afterward all contradicted any notion of an impulsive act. The explanation of a tragic accident or a moment of mental confusion no longer held ground. Authorities officially reclassified the case as a premeditated crime with aggravating factors. Immediately after being taken into custody, Natalie claimed she acted alone. According to her version, neither her husband relatives, nor anyone else knew about the planned incident. However, investigators soon encountered several facts that cast doubt on her claim. One by one, questions began to surface, many of which still remain unanswered. The first red flag was the role of the driver who had brought Emily to the house the day before she went missing. He was not affiliated with any rideshare service. Later, it was discovered that the driver was a relative of Natalie. He didn't hold a license and claimed he had simply been asked to give a friend a ride and wasn't aware of any details. However, investigators found that after dropping Emily off, the same driver returned to the house and helped with cleanup. During questioning, he insisted he didn't know anything about the incident and was just helping tidy up. This explanation raised serious concerns. The man stated he had no idea what had happened, yet he cleaned a space that clearly showed signs of a struggle. He noticed stains, a strange odor, and the absence of Emily, the very person he had dropped off there. Instead of asking questions or calling for help, he assisted in mopping the floors and moving furniture. Investigators noted that such behavior seemed inconsistent with that of someone truly unaware of the situation. The house where the incident occurred belonged to Natalie's father, though at the time it was occupied by her brother and his wife. According to Natalie, they were not home during the time of the crime. However, investigators were unable to verify their absence. It remained unclear where exactly they were during the critical hours. One major question that lingered was whether it was truly possible for them to be unaware of a newly dug pit on the property, or the fact that someone had cleaned the home with the help of an outside individual. Her brother's wife claimed she had no knowledge of Natalie's visit and that they weren't particularly close. However, it was later confirmed that Natalie had visited the house multiple times in the days leading up to the incident. She had arrived under the pretext of helping around the house or spending the weekend. This made her presence at the property appear routine and unremarkable to its occupants. Moreover, forensic experts pointed out that it would be extremely difficult for one person to dig a pit, carry out an act of aggression, perform a makeshift procedure, move a body, clean the crime scene, hide evidence, and leave the location without attracting any attention, all within a limited time frame. Especially when considering the logistical complexity. The body had been wrapped in fabric, various materials were used, and the cleaning process involved removing objects and washing clothes. All of this required time, strength, and coordination. This raised a critical question. Did Natalie really act alone? Despite the growing suspicions, no concrete evidence of other individuals' involvement had been found at the time of the investigation. No member of her family had been officially named an accomplice. The driver remained listed as a witness, although his behavior raised legitimate concerns. His actions were not legally classified as assistance in the crime, as he maintained that he didn't know what had taken place and was simply running an errand for a relative. As of now, investigators have reached a tentative conclusion. Natalie may not be revealing the full truth. It's possible that other individuals were involved indirectly or possess relevant information but are withholding it. There is currently no legal basis to file charges against others, but the narrative of her acting entirely alone remains incomplete. Authorities continue to examine Natalie's connections, her phone records, movement patterns, and digital activity. Several questions remain unanswered. After the body was officially identified and all forensic procedures were completed, Emily Sina's family was granted permission to hold a burial. Due to the condition of the remains, the service had to be conducted quickly. The ceremony was brief and lacked the traditional farewell. It took place privately, attended only by the closest family members, Emily's mother, her stepfather Antonio, the baby's young father, and a few relatives. The family was devastated. The emotional impact was profound, and they were not in a condition to speak publicly. Antonio, the stepfather, declined to comment. Emily's mother, according to those close to her, was in a fragile emotional state and had withdrawn from social interactions, avoiding even neighbors. Emily's partner, who had never imagined becoming a father under such tragic circumstances, attended the funeral but spoke very little. According to the family, he has remained committed. He continues to visit the baby and stays in touch with the grandmother and Antonio. Despite his young age, he has expressed a willingness to take an active role in raising his daughter. The newborn, rescued following the incident, was officially placed under the temporary care of her grandmother, Emily's mother. This decision was made jointly by child welfare authorities and the district attorney's office. Emily's stepfather was also named as one of the responsible guardians. Medical professionals monitored the baby's condition closely during the initial weeks. Thankfully, she remained in stable health and faced no immediate threats to her well-being. After being cleared for discharge, she was brought home to the very place where her mother had once lived. The motive behind Natalie's actions continued to be a central focus of discussion. Despite already being a mother to 3, she had maintained a false pregnancy for nearly 9 months, creating the illusion of impending motherhood. She went to great lengths to fabricate medical records and craft a convincing narrative online, presenting herself on social media as an expectant parent. But her intention was not simply to raise another child. She had been specifically targeting expectant mothers who were due to have daughters. Her selection process, the setup of the location, and the research into procedures for extracting an unborn baby all pointed toward deliberate planning. Natalie remains in custody, awaiting trial. The charges against her have not been dropped, and investigators consider the evidence supporting those charges to be solid. Emily's case has since become a widely discussed and deeply troubling example, one that has had a lasting impact on the way online interactions are viewed, especially among vulnerable communities. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.